from being a stay-at-home mom to with 5 children, always needing me, always being around, always having a little one, to having all this time to myself. And after about a week and a half, I looked at my husband and I was like, yeah, so this isn't for me. Like I I appreciate, and I have people in my life that I love very much who um their kids all went to school and they were like, this is my time to celebrate because I've done all the hard work. And for me, I was just like, yeah, I my accomplishment for the day can't be going to lunch. And I need something more. And so I told my husband I was going to apply to law school.
Welcome. How are you today? You hanging in there? Hanging on? It gets better, I promise. Perhaps you're having a fabulous day. I hope so. I'm talking with Cianne Wallin. This is the first time we've actually met. She is going to law school, so I had a few questions for her regarding what's going on in the courts lately. She talks about being a mother. She's run 10 marathons. I am truly inspired by her grit and determination. She is a survivor, and I hope you enjoy our talk. I saw your comment on an Upworthy post on Instagram regarding a woman who was concerned about like starting a new career. I think she was older than us, don't you think? Maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And she was like concerned about starting a new career. And you replied to that thread that you started law school at 40 after raising 5 kids. And I thought, wow, I want to talk to this woman. So tell me, go ahead, tell me about, raising 5 kids and law school. Why law school?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's a little bit of backstory to that, right? I mean, I had 5 kids. I went to college and I ended up getting pregnant at 19 with my first child. And it was an interesting situation where I grew up in Utah in a fairly conservative area, but my parents were not so conservative. So when I told them I was pregnant, they kicked me out of our home. So that was pretty surprising. Um, and I had to kind of pivot my life. Before that, I thought I was going to be a doctor. I had all these grand plans, and now I was found myself pregnant and very much felt that I was supposed to raise this child for one reason or another. And then after having her, I met my now husband, and we went on to have 4 more children together. He pursued a professional career, and the whole time I was slowly pursuing my education. And so we moved all across the US. We lived in Washington, D.C., and I had a husband who was gone all the time, and I managed to get my associate's degree. And then we moved to North Carolina, where my husband was still gone all the time, and I got my bachelor's degree with 3 little children. And then throughout that journey, I was like, oh, medicine's not my journey. I want to be an attorney. One of the big things that kind of pushed me in that was kind of this social justice. We lived in North Carolina when there were several wrongful convictions coming about. It was also in the time of same-sex marriage rights and a lot of litigation around that, a lot of Supreme Court concerns. And so for me, it was very much like, oh, I really care about this. I care about the Constitution. I care about justice. Um, and so I decided that I was going to go to law school at some point. And so that was in 2010. And then we had a few more moves, a few more babies. And when my youngest child went to kindergarten, it took me about a week of him being gone. I went from being a stay-at-home mom to with 5 children, always needing me, always being around, always having a little one, to having all this time to myself. And after about a week and a half, I looked at my husband and I was like, yeah, so this isn't for me. Like I I appreciate, and I have people in my life that I love very much who um their kids all went to school and they were like, this is my time to celebrate because I've done all the hard work. And for me, I was just like, yeah, my accomplishment for the day can't be going to lunch, and
Right.
I need something more. And so I told my husband I was going to apply to law school, which I did. We lived in North Carolina at the time. And about 6 weeks after turning in my application, my husband and I very much felt we needed to move back to Utah, where our roots were. We've got parents that are getting older. We also just felt like it was maybe going to be a good change for him professionally. And so we found ourselves in a tiny town in southern Utah where the nearest law school was in Las Vegas, Nevada, 2 hours away.
Hey, can we back up? And I want to talk about your parents, when you became pregnant at 19, they didn't welcome you to come home to raise the kid. Like, what was their thinking behind that?
Yeah, so it's actually really interesting. So my parents divorced when I was like 8 years old. I was just a child. And I ended up living with my dad. Um, my parents were very progressive for the 80s and they mediated everything. And when it came to the kids, we were the most important thing. So they said, you can choose who you want to live with. No one was going to have hurt feelings. And my dad was my person. So I went with my dad. I had a good relationship with my mom, but when she married my stepdad, things just weren't awesome between he and I, which, that's blended families are difficult. So, and then I grew up with my dad who's not religious. My mother and my stepdad were active in the Latter-day Saint faith, the Mormon faith, and my dad is not. And so he got remarried. And so when I came home and said I was pregnant, they told me that unless I would have an abortion, I had to leave the home. I am very much a let women choose what they want to do with their lives person. For me, that just wasn't a choice. I respect and honor people who would maybe have made a different choice in my situation, but for me, that was not the right choice. And because of that, they said, well, we're not going to help you raise this child. You're making an adult decision, so you get to be an adult and you need to leave the home. It came down to my stepmom saying either she leaves or I leave. And um my dad chose her. And um so that made me grow, and that made me reevaluate how much trust I put in certain people. And 25 years later, my dad and we have a good relationship where I would say we're close, but there are things I hold back. And but now as a parent, I also respect him choosing his spouse. And I also know that it was the right situation for me. So after they told me I had to get out, I went and lived with my mother and my stepdad for a little while, and my siblings. And my mom helped me find an apartment in a safe area. And my stepdad was very against it, but she was like, "This is my kid, and I'm gonna help her." And so my mom was fairly involved in my pregnancy. She was the one in the labor and delivery room. And she and I are extremely close now. I think that's one of the things that happens with motherhood. I've seen it with my two adult daughters who have just had recently had babies. And there's just a greater appreciation for your mom when you become a mom. And so I think, our relationship really changed, but I did do it by myself. I found an apartment, and I don't want to call it like my big girl job, but I found a job that had benefits and had normal hours. And, I went from having a great job that I loved with the Gap. That's how old I am, is that was the big job to have, was working at the Gap. And I loved my job, but I quickly recognized that I had other people I needed to take care of. And so, I was paying my own rent, paying my own bills, and doing what I needed to. And while my mom was supportive, I was on my own. I was going home to an apartment by myself, which I am okay being alone, but going through a pregnancy alone is very emotional. And there was a period of time that I considered placing her up for adoption, um, mostly because I felt she deserved to have a stable and steady life. And I wasn't sure if at 19 I was going to be capable of that. There was a lot of heartache and a lot of things that I had to experience
Yeah.
on my own. I didn't have a lot of people I could rely on outside of I have a sister who's always been the one I could confide in. And so, yeah, that was an experience, but I think we go through different things to learn compassion, and to be able to empathize with people. I think, um, when you live in a black and white world, it's easy to put people in a box and make a decision about what you would do. But when you start living in the gray, it gives you not, I don't want to say walk in people's shoes, because we could never truly walk in someone's shoes. We never know what's really going on inside of any given person. But it has helped me be able to look at someone who maybe is reacting to a situation strongly or in a way that I don't understand why they would be reacting in such a way, whether it's anger or meanness or withdrawing, right? Like, people react to things in different ways. It at least makes me pause and say, something has to be going on with that person. And my job is to support them and not judge them, and not rush out and get on social media and be a troll and talk about a horrible experience with a waitress at a restaurant, right? Like, everyone has a situation, and those moments of being alone, and then just throughout my life and life experiences, have just taught me to have a lot of grace for people, and a lot of understanding. And I think that's also helped me, like, have grace with my dad and my stepmom in their decisions. And
Hmm. And concerning the father of your daughter, did you get married straight away, or did that kind of progress?
so the father of my daughter disappeared when I was about 10 weeks pregnant, and that ended up being a pretty big blessing in my life. um he wanted nothing to really do with her at the time, and I had my own stuff going on, and I couldn't really deal with his insecurities or his emotions around everything. Um, and so she was born. I let him know that she was born, and he didn't want to see her, didn't want to do anything. Um, I I had not really any intentions of, like, pursuing anything from him. I mean, child support, that kind of stuff would have been nice. But I actually met my husband when she was 6 weeks old, and he was this kind 21-year-old, fresh off of serving a mission for the Mormon church. He just loved us, and he stepped into the dad role, and he would help get her to daycare when I had to get to work early, and he was buying diapers, and he was doing all the things that a dad would do right at 6 weeks old. And then that relationship progressed rather fast. I don't know if you know much about, like, the Mormon faith, but we tend to get married young, and we tend to get married fast. And so,
Yeah.
um, yeah, so we met in October of 1999, and we were married in April 2000. And so it was kind of a 6-month whirlwind, but I also knew very quickly that he was my person. There was just something with him and how we interacted with each other that I was like, oh, this is what this is supposed to feel like, and this is my person. And yeah, so the thing that's been great is we've had essentially 25 years of not having to deal with, and that sounds bad, but not having to deal with another parent. Like, my husband's education took us and career took us all over the United States, and had her birth father been involved, we would have always had to be petitioning the courts for permission to move and to relocate her. I never had to share her with holidays. She got to be with her siblings. So it ended up being something really great for him not to be involved. And I don't have any hard feelings towards him. That daughter's actually getting married in about a month. And she's invited him to come, and I don't have any animosity about him not wanting to be involved, um, because it ended up better for me, which is selfish. But I also think for her, I mean, I know that she had some issues as far as not being wanted and why didn't he want to be involved. And I think any child would have had those emotions. But for me, I was extremely grateful that I just got to have this family. I got to have my all of my children together all the time. And
Yeah, it's weird how the universe works sometimes, right? I love that. I love that story. And your husband he was fresh off a mission and he just went into the dad role immediately. What does he do? What does he do now? What's his job?
so he is a plastic surgeon. He jumped in on this with like he had none of his secondary education. He had medical school to go through, and he was like, "All right, I'll be a dad. We'll figure this out." And so now he owns his own practice, and he does plastic surgery in Southern Utah.
Oh, okay. What kind of law are you studying right now?
So right now in school, it's really law school is very theory based. I mean, I think it's like every education, right? Like you go to school to learn, but they don't actually teach you how to do the job, right? They're like, we're going to teach you all these things. And so right now, I'm in my second year of law school. Today was actually my last day of classes for my second year. Um,
Congrats.
and the first year, thank you. Thank you. It's a big deal. Our first year is really almost every law school kind of has the same classes where you're learning kind of general law that's applicable in every state. And then your second and third year, you can pick a little bit more what you want to specialize in. I have been involved in a law school clinic, so I've been working with clients this year. It's a small business clinic. So what we mostly focus on is helping people set up their businesses, make sure their governing documents are in place, which is great. But I spent last summer working as in a prosecutor's office in Southern Utah. And I never thought I would do criminal law. Um, I had a criminal law class my first year. Several of the cases would leave me in tears or frustrated about how the resolution came out. And I was like, I know criminal law is not for me, but this will be a good summer. Um, it's in my city, so I don't have to commute. They're going to pay me, and that will be great. And then I spent about 4 weeks on a sex abuse case
Oh
involving,
God.
yeah. And it was one of those things that I thought would be incredibly difficult for me. I dug in because I was like, they're asking me to do this work. And the more that I did the work, the more that I like looked at the statements from the defendant, when I talked to the victim, when I looked at various pieces of evidence, the more I realized how much I loved working for a victim, and finding justice for a victim. And sometimes justice is having your day in court, and sometimes it is having a jury believe you. So right now, that's kind of my focus. That's where I am going to be spending my summer. Again, I'll be working for the same office doing similar crimes. But I also very much love patent law. I love the intricacies of how patents are granted, why they're granted, when there's infringement. And I also love security regulation. So like SEC type stuff, insider trading, fraudulent activity in businesses. But the big thing I've learned is I love the courtroom. So I'm definitely looking for a career where I get to either prosecute or litigate. I think I'm drawn to all three of those types of law because they're very much driven by statutes, whether they're federal or state. You know, a lot of the rules revolving around like stock is all very highly regulated. And I like the game of finding why something's in violation of those rules or why it's not. And so I kind of like that game of how can I formulate my argument so that I win. I'm very competitive. I like to win. So hopefully I'll be in a courtroom. Being a prosecutor, I will be in the courtroom every week, multiple times. It won't always be for trials, but I will have a lot of face time with judges, a lot of on your feet thinking. And so it will be a good fit for a little bit. And I could be there forever. I might change. I also very much am drawn to sports law. I had a professor who is the general legal counsel for the hockey team here in Las Vegas. And I continually ask him when I can have a job. And it's also the same thing. It's balancing a business interest against like sponsors or players, venues, different. There's always a moving piece, and it's how do you make those pieces fit for the best resolution for everybody?
Yeah, you're definitely in the right field if all of those kind of categories really interest you. Yeah, I'd be curious to see where you end up. For some reason, I thought, oh, she's living in Las Vegas. Maybe she's doing gambling
Yeah,
law.
I actually really love gaming law. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's actually it's also highly regulated, so it's kind of in the same space. Gaming has a lot of issues. And I don't mean issues like bad, just like issues that need to be resolved legally. Um, and so it's, like there there's a lot with gaming. And I actually just had to write and research a paper. So in law school, every law school has reviews or journals. And you have to kind of apply to get on. And I'm on one of our journals here at UNLV, and it's specifically about gaming law. And when I got onto it, I was like, well, I don't really care about gaming, but it will be an interesting topic, right? Like this will be fine. But part of being on the journal, we're required to write at least a 25-page paper about something related to gaming. And living in Utah, in southern Utah, there is no gambling allowed in the state of Utah. There's no lotteries, there's no bingos, there's nothing. Nothing is supposed to be happening. Even like charity raffles, all that kind of stuff. And um, in the area I live, there is a reservation, and tribal gaming is a huge thing here in the US. And um, I did research about poverty levels and crime levels related to tribal gaming and why Utah should allow tribal gaming. And I realized that I actually really like gaming law and I really like the issues surrounding gaming law.
Yeah, I also learned Hawaii doesn't allow well, at least they don't allow lottery. Is the lottery considered like gambling?
Yeah, yeah. So the lottery is considered gambling mostly because it's a game of chance, right? Like you throw your numbers out and you have a chance. There's nothing really skill-based about it. Hawaii and Utah are the only two states that don't allow any form of gaming. But then there's other states that you can't have, there's no casinos, but there's lottery. Most of those states now do have some kind of gaming because the tribes are doing the gaming. Um, but yeah, Hawaii and Utah are the holdouts. They don't, they're,
Yeah, that was interesting. I did not know that about
yeah,
Hawaii.
yeah. And they're both kind of motivated by religion. Um, when, settlers went to Utah and it was founded by the Mormon pioneers, that was something that they didn't want to have. But also when Christian missionaries started going to Hawaii, like gaming was actually a really big part of their culture. And this is actually in my paper. This is why I'm arguing for it is because I researched a lot on Hawaii also. And it also kind of stemmed from Christian missionaries coming in and saying there shouldn't be gaming, and that just kind of has stuck.
I imagine if you did choose to go into gaming law, the technology would be changing so fast. You'd have to keep up with that.
There's a lot of legal issues around all of that. So it could, I mean, there's definitely jobs in the gaming field.
My friends and I, it's just because it's in the news. We've been, talking about the US Supreme Court case that they're currently hearing about the LGBTQ books allowed in public schools. Do you have any opinion on that? I'm just like curious. I have a lot of teachers, friends who are teachers, so I've been just asking them also. I'd like to know your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion is um it's dangerous to ban books. I think that kids should be able to read what they want to read. And I think sometimes parents very much want to control everything because parents tend to, there's a lot of fear, I think, with parents. They're concerned what their kids are going to be exposed to, like on YouTube or on social, right? We're all very concerned about where these influences are coming from. But also, I think it's dangerous to try to keep kids in an insular box and not let them learn and explore the world around them. I also think it is a very poor or argument that these books should be banned because they're um, indecent or, they're sexually explicit or any of those things because I mean, we all grew up reading books about heterosexual characters being the protagonist, and no one has an issue with those books. And so, I don't like that. I don't like that the government thinks they should be controlling the idea of the free flow of ideas. And I think school librarians are very, very good at picking out books that are appropriate for the ages that they teach and that they help. And we should trust their discernment. And a book about gay penguins is not a bad book for a little child to read. It's just a book that opens their idea to different types of people and different types of life and different opinions. And so
Yeah, I agree. I trust school librarians. I think what the concern was for at least my friends who are teachers was that it become part of the curriculum. It's something they have to teach and talk about in the classroom. They were definitely against that. Since we're talking about the Supreme Court, I wanted to get your opinion on Ketanji Brown Jackson when she was asked what is a woman. She couldn't reply. She didn't reply.
yeah, I mean, I think we live in an interesting time um because no one wants to offend anybody, right?
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things that I think some people are extremely mindful of it. I think other people are not mindful at all. And then I think there's some people that take it to the extreme, right? Where like I know transgender individuals. I have good relationships with people who are transgender and I support them. And I think there is I think there's value in the different I think there's value in womanhood. I respect someone who transitions and wants to be called she, her, or he, him. But I also think that no one is going to know what it feels like to have period cramps if you don't have a uterus. Like there are just things you're just not going to know. And it there are aspects of womanhood that I think are precious and important. And I don't think, I mean, for me personally, someone being transgender who is like male transition to female, it doesn't take away from who I am as a woman. Um, I know some people do have issues with that, and they're totally welcome to have those feelings and those opinions. For me, it's not an issue. But I also know that being a woman is something I value. Now, people who are transgender completely have their own set of how they've seen the world, how they've experienced the world. Um, but I also, as a woman, have also experienced the world in a different way. And so I think if you can't say that like the female experience is different, you're missing the point. Everyone has a different experience. And so when someone can't say what's a woman, like I'm not going to sit here and say a woman is biologically born with a uterus and breasts, but I will say that a woman has vastly different experiences than her male counterparts. And there are things that as a biological female you experience that you otherwise don't experience. And so for me, it's more like, well, what's your experience been? Because I grew up with a different sense of who I was because I was a girl. And um and so I just think everyone needs to be cognizant that whether you are a heterosexual white man or you are a black gay female, like we all have different experiences, and you can't just interpose and say, like I've always felt different. I always felt like I was in the wrong body and now I identify as a female, that your experience is the same as mine was when I was 13. Because it wasn't. It just wasn't. But it doesn't mean that your experience isn't valuable or that I'm not going to respect who you are. But I do think it's tricky. And it's tricky with kids, right? Like it's tricky when you look at like your daughters and try to explain this world and what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes back to what you were saying. Life isn't black and white, you know? And I just think, especially with this subject, people just aren't willing to listen to each other and talk about it calmly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's concerning to say the
Yeah.
least.
I mean, it's, like I don't know what it's like to be in I mean, I don't want to say I do. I have different experiences. I have dealt with disordered eating most of my life. And so like I've been at war with my body in different ways. Um but I just think it's hard to say like I don't know what it's like to feel like I'm in the wrong body, but people also don't know what it's like to like start your period and bleed through and be in seventh grade and be like mortified. I think it's just a very tricky, sensitive subject. But I also feel like there's other things that are happening that are big deals. Particularly, I'm guessing you're in the US, but it sounds like you've got a UK
Oh, I'm
accent.
glad you can recognize my accent. Yeah, it's fading fast. I spent most of my adult life here in the US.
I mean, there's just issues here in the States that I'm like, why are we focusing on the transgender college athletes when like our testing scores are going down across the board? Like, shouldn't shouldn't we be concerned about what's actually happening with the education instead of
That was another thing with my teacher friends. They're like, we're having trouble with the basics over here, you know? Like, now you want to talk about these books, in the library? Yeah, the literacy rates, just,
yeah,
yeah, the American education system. And, well, don't get me started on the lunches they serve the kids.
they're atrocious. They're so bad. It's like I wouldn't feed it to my dog. Like, no,
Right?
it's
Yeah, you wonder if this is all noise to actually distract us from bigger things at
yeah,
hand, like wars going on
yeah,
too.
yeah. There's just, I mean, like take your pick. There's issues I think all of us can get behind, and our approach might be slightly different, right? Like someone might view the education system and be like, well, this is how I think it should be done. And I might say, well, I don't think it should be done this way. I think it should be done this way. But we're all on the same page that the education's important. But then we're focusing on like these small minuscule, and I don't want to, they're big issues for the people involved, but for most of us, it feels like it's, at least for me, it feels like it's a distraction from what we really should be focusing on.
It really is. It really is. I want to ask you about a post I saw on your Instagram
Yeah.
feed, and I'm going to read it out because it's actually quite beautiful as well. So I'll read it out. And you have this gorgeous picture of yourself that goes along with it. I have been on a journey for 44 years with this woman. I have allowed her to be broken. I have allowed her, I have allowed others to treat her disrespectfully. I've seen her fall and stand back up several times and be the light for the world and love despite all of it. She has been bullied. She has been called crazy. She stood paralyzed by fear while she fought battles in her mind, heart, and soul. This woman has made many bad decisions as a human, daughter, mother, and as a friend. She has trusted and believed in people who didn't believe in her. She has a smart mouth, a stubborn streak, and is a bit feisty. She has scars and combat wounds. Some people love this woman, some like her, and some don't care for her at all. She has done good in her life, and she has done not so good in her life. Every mistake, failure, trial, disappointment, betrayal, success, joy, and achievement has made her into who she is today. She's not perfect. She is gracefully broken, but beautifully standing, and she will never stop learning, growing, or moving forward. I love that. Talk to me about this. What persuaded you to post this?
I I think it kind of goes back to what I said earlier about growing in a way that creates compassion within you. And especially in an Instagram world where everyone likes to post that everything is perfect, right? Like we like to have the filters and we only post the picture where everyone is smiling. We don't post the picture where someone's on the ground bawling. We don't even post like our bad days. My mom has a motto that like 80% of life is just okay. Like it's not good, it's not bad, it's just okay. And 15% is great and 15% is really bad. But the thing that's hard is that 30% kind of defines our lives. We live for the highs and we try to avoid the lows. But I think through all of that, people put on a front. I know I certainly do. People don't know the scars and the wounds that I've dealt with. And even though I am pretty open, right? I was a victim of a sexual assault when I was 18, and the police didn't believe me. And it's very hard to have a detective look you in the eyes and say, well, he said you were drunk and that you liked it rough, um, when you've got bruises, right? So, and so, like I felt very like let down by like the justice system in that regard, right? But the person was also a friend, and so I had to deal with that, and then that was about four months before I found out I was pregnant, and then was on my own, and um, so I had kind of a series of those kind of things that really I wouldn't say they broke me, but they definitely changed my perspective in who valued me as a human. And I also have dealt, like I said earlier, with eating disorders. I was a ballerina in a former life, not really ever professionally, but that's what I focused on my whole childhood, pretty exclusively from 12 to 17. And that culture led to some significant eating disorders. And I have felt significantly betrayed by my body. Interesting when I also can look at my body and think that it is amazing that I've been able to grow five other humans and birth five healthy humans with this body, right? And so I have felt at war with my body since I was about 12 or 13 years old. And so that's hard, right? And I have felt deeply betrayed by my God. I am Christian in my own personal faith. For most of my adult life, I was practicing in the Mormon faith. I've kind of stepped away recently, but I have felt deeply betrayed by the God I believe in. And that has been through various experiences. I mean, some of them are family. Family is always complicated, right? And feeling like the people that you assumed would be there for you aren't. Um, but I also felt betrayed in I have had um this dream to go to law school since 2004. God kind of put a stop to it. Um, and and so that's been hard. That's been hard to like see other things happening for other people. I've discussed this with my husband. Like I felt like his whatever he wanted always happened, but whatever I wanted always got put kind of second fiddle. And so, that's been hard. I am an avid runner. I love running. I've run, I think, I think I've run 10 marathons and I don't know how many half marathons, but I run for my mental health. I had a relapse of my eating disorders 10 years ago and was in and out of the hospital, and it was not a great situation. And I had a great therapist that suggested that I, instead of hyper fixating on my eating choices, that I hyper fixate on a training program. And because it all comes to control, eating disorders are all about control. And so she wanted me to find something else I could control. So I started running distances 10 years ago. Let's see, 4.5 years ago, I had to have heart surgery, had to kind of had a pause on running. And so there's just been all these things that have kind of broken me down in those ways. But then there's also the breaking down of like the heartache when you see something happening with your kids, right? Like there is moments that it just life brings you to your knees. And because of these social media lives, it's important for me to let people know that I am not a perfect human being and I have made bad choices, right? Like I'm a human. I've made choices that I later regret. Um, I have let down my family at times. I've let down friends. Um, like I've done all of those things, but I also very much try to be kind. I very much try to love people and give people grace. And so I just kind of think of myself as I'm not sure if it's a Japanese or Chinese to practice where pottery breaks and they fill it in with gold.
Yeah, yeah, it's Japanese kintsugi. Yeah, it's
And it's
gorgeous.
beautiful, right? And I just try to see my wounds and my scars as flecks of gold that just make me a more whole and beautiful and complete person.
Do you think we're in a culture where I almost feel like failure, you have to fail in life. You have to learn and move on and grow. And even being offended somehow in this culture is like, oh, how dare you like offend me even, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard any of my other podcasts, but I'm definitely a believer in like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And in life, you just need to harden the fuck up sometimes, you know?
For sure. I mean, I think I was recently out to dinner with one of my girlfriends and we were talking about the curse of being a Gen X, right? And we were like, we got like boomer parents who were like intense and they don't apologize for anything. Like they don't, if they mess up, they're not apologizing to you. And there was very high expectation. And in my home, failure was not an option. And so, like I tell people, I am a high functioning perfectionist with anxiety. And like I'm always on edge. I don't want to disappoint people. I don't want to let people down, which is not great for law school because we all kind of have that personality and law school's grade on a curve, so there's only a handful of A's and like it's very not good for people's mental health. But then we kind of overcompensated because we were like, I just wish my parents would have like admitted they were wrong when they yelled at me, or like apologized for hurting my, not listening to me or hurting my feelings. And so we went the other way where we're like, protect your kids at all costs. Don't let them feel hard things. Don't let them fail. Like, and lower the standard, right? Like, you don't have to get A's. Like, it's not about the grade, it's about the journey, right? Which I actually do believe it's about the experience. But now we have a whole generation of kids who don't know they can do hard things because we haven't let them do hard things.
Going back to your eating disorder, I have well, I have a family member who has struggled with that her entire life. So running, that really helped you because that was
Yeah.
something you could control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I with my last relapse in 2015, um, so many aspects of my life felt out of control. And it was the one thing I could hold on to. Um, I was very insecure in my marriage. I was very insecure in my role as a mom, like if I was doing a good job. There were a lot of things, and I can't control my I mean, we want to think we can control our kids, but like I couldn't control what was happening with them at school. I couldn't control um decisions that people were making that I felt like I was just being kind of like pushed into. Like whether it was, like we were building a house at the time, which was great, and I did make most of this decisions, but there felt my whole life felt like everyone else was controlling every piece of what was going on. And I could control what I could control. I could control what was going in my body. I could control calories so that I would have like net zero days. Like it was, I could control every aspect. And so my therapist suggested running, and I was like, I hate running. And, she was like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to come up with a training plan. And a lot of people like running as a group. I don't mind it. I'm fine with that. But during that time, I very much, I ran alone for everything. And she was like, you get to control when you go. You get to control how fast you go. You get to control whether you listen to music or a podcast or nothing at all. You get to control what you're wearing. You get to control like all these aspects, right? It got to be about me, which I think is something that women struggle with as mothers sometimes, as we lose the
Yeah,
me.
that's an excellent point. Mothers definitely need to find something just for them. I run. I don't particularly like running at all, but it's just so good for my mental health.
Exactly. I mean, like I was telling I just ran a half marathon with my mom and my sister, and my sister had never run a distance before. My mom started running when she lost her second husband, my stepdad, to cancer. So it was kind of like for her mental health. She was like, I want to do this race. I'm turning 70 this year. So we all got on board to run it. My sister was like, this is the worst. I hate it. And I was like, you're gonna sign up for another race. And she has. She said she wasn't going to, but I told her 90% of my runs, I start thinking, I don't want to do this. Like 90% of the time, I'm lacing up my shoes thinking, this is the last thing I want to do right now. Like, I would give anything to be in my bed for another hour. I have never finished a run not thinking, I'm so glad I just went for a run.
I ask all my guests the same question. What is the music that moves you? What are you listening to?
I feel like music was put on this earth by God to help me feel seen and heard. And so I love music. Um, my go-to song is I Dreamed a Dream in Les Mis. It is the song that um when I am sad, I feel heard. Um, it also is the song that kept me going for my dream, right? Like that song's all about losing your dreams and life not being what you wanted it to be. And um for me, that that's always spoken to me. Um, but I have felt like I have a chance to not give up on my dreams. So that has always, I don't want to say it's my anthem, but that is, I taught myself how to play the piano when I was about 16, and that's a song that I play almost every time I sit down to the piano. It's the song I sing as loud as I can before I go into court and have to make an argument. There's just something about that song that that really resonates with me. I also, I'm a musical theater person, so most of these come from musical theater. Goodbye Yellow Brick Road by Elton John is probably one of my favorite songs, as is My Guitar Gently Weeps by the Beatles. I think the chords and the lyrics behind them are just beautiful. But, I also love like Defying Gravity and the things that we can accomplish if we just let go and believe in ourselves when people say we can't do it, right? So I love all things music. I don't have my song that brings me comfort is To Make You Feel My Love by Garth Brooks, which I know he wasn't the original singer, but his version's what I like. And like my husband, um, I'm not sure what it's called, but I think it's She's Every Woman by Garth Brooks, where it's like a little crazy, but she's nice. Like he's like, this is your anthem. This defines you. And so I love music. I can find meaning in almost every song. That's one thing that I think is amazing. And there's hymns from religion, like Amazing Grace, I think is beautiful and powerful. So I love music. I can talk about music all day long.
Oh, yeah, music is magical. Thank you so much for your time today, Cianne. You've been a wonderful guest, and it's been amazing chatting to you. Thanks so much.
It was so nice meeting you. Thank you. Have a good day.